Swadikap, Excellencies, Executive, distinguished delegates, friends from media corps, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And warmest welcome to the Sustainable Development Challenges in Asia, the conference in honor of His Majesty the King's 70th anniversary of his accession to the throne. I'm Vasu Sang Sing Kao, and it's my great privilege and pleasure to be your MC throughout this morning's session. According to the King's Sustainable Development, the Royal Project is an initiative of His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej of Thailand to solve the problem and both enhance and escalate the standard of living by educating people who live in remote areas to become the more self-supporting and more prosperous in sustainable dimensions. This conference is held to promote the King's Project internationally, and moreover, it's a solid opportunity that Thailand can discover sustainable development ideas and also to experiences from other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point of time, I would like to call upon the President of Chulalongkorn University to kindly proceed to the stage to inform to all of us the purposes of this conference and also to deliver the opening remarks to all of us. So everyone, please put your hand together for the warm round of applause in welcoming Professor Dr. Pandit Ua Apon on stage.
Mr. Stefano Fortio, Director of the Environment and Development Division, UNESCO. Ms. Lamia Morshed, Executive Director, UNIS Center, Bangladesh. Ms. Monica C., Buddhist Compassion Relief Suchi Foundation, Taiwan. หม่อมราชวงศ์ดิษนัดดา เดชสกุล Chairman of the แม่ฟ้าหลวง Foundation. Associate Professor Dr. Nuan Noi Trirat, Director of the Institute of Asian Study, Chulalongkorn University. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and pleasure for Chulalongkorn University and myself to greet and welcome you to this conference, Sustainable Development Challenges in Asia, a conference in honor of the 70th anniversary of His Majesty the King's accession to the throne. This year also marks 70 years since the Kingdom of Thailand was admitted to the United Nations in 1946. During those 7 decades, our country has pursued a path of development that has led it away from what was once an agrarian-based economy and community-based society founded upon Buddhist moral and ethical principles to an industrialized country with booming urban areas that in many respects are products of modernization and westernization. I believe this development path has been mirrored by many other nations here in the vital and dynamic regions of Asia. Thailand has undoubtedly benefited from its exponential growth. Its population can now afford to enjoy a quality of life quite unlike before, with poverty having been alleviated, a rise in the standard of living, better access to health care, and with education assured, and basic security and rights guaranteed. Nevertheless, there have been inevitable downsides to this development that have come in the shape of environmental degradation, a disparity in income and wealth distribution, and compromises in opportunity and justice. We have now become aware and have called into questions this model of development, which places its principal confidence in GDP as the key measure of progress, and have discovered the concept of sustainable development to be better suited to our varied contexts and needs. In Thailand, in particular, we have been fortunate to have been inspired by the decades-long benevolent leadership of His Majesty the King Bhumibol Adulyadej, whose accession to the throne we celebrate today. His Majesty's tireless efforts made evident in his royally initiated development projects and the promotion of the sufficiency economy philosophy have enabled us to move towards a more balanced and sustainable form of development. Sustainable development may have become a frequent subject of international conferences, but it is my hope that this particular conference will help us not only appreciate why the concept of sustainable development has become so popular, but also how Thailand and its Asia neighbors can adapt to this model of global development that take into consideration the need for more balanced development and better resource management. If on the nation level we can, and indeed we must, pursue suitable development as a multidimensional concept, encompassing the economic, social, institutional, and physical elements of development in a wider sense, it will be relatively easy to make the necessary adjustments for truly effective cooperation on the regional basis. Ladies and gentlemen, today's event is materialized only with full support from our co-organizers, namely the Thailand Sustainable Development Foundation, the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, the Royal Initiative Discovery Foundation, Shokan Chang Group, and Nation Multimedia Company. I would like to wish you every success in your deliberations and discussions. And for those of you from abroad, I hope you have a very pleasant stay in Thailand. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Dr. Bandit Apon, our President of Chulalongkorn University, for your opening speech. And up next, ladies and gentlemen, we'll proceed further to the keynote lecture, which will be presented by the Director of Environment and Development Division, UNESCAP. So everyone please join me in welcoming Mr. Stefano Fortio.
Thank you very much. Good morning and Sawadee Kap. First of all, I would like to express my great appreciation and my great honor that ESCAP and I have been invited to address this extremely important event. It's marking the 70th anniversary of His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej in the throne of Thailand, and this year 2016 has also marking something quite personal and important for me. It marks my 7 years in Thailand, this wonderful country. And I must say that although I'm coming from a place that it's quite far away from Thailand, from another part of this world, I'm coming from Europe, from Greece, I really felt extremely welcomed from the very first moment I came in Thailand. And I understood that one of the things that have made me to really love this country is that whatever I was studying for many years when it comes to sustainable development, when it comes to environment and development, I saw some practical approaches of really happening in this country. So I really believe that the sufficiency economy philosophy illustrates the power of value-based approaches that anchors very strongly in cultures of Asia and most importantly in the culture of Thailand. And this power has influenced so far the way that Thailand has been developed. And I think that Thailand is a very good example of how sustainability, economic growth, environmental protection, and social inclusion could happen together. What I would like to do in the next 20 minutes is to share some thoughts with you. First of all, on what are some of the main challenges that we are facing today when it comes to sustainability in the Asia and the Pacific region, so to try to address the main theme of this workshop. Then I will try to make an argument why sustainability is the only way forward and how the Sustainable Development Goals could help us on achieving the much needed pathway for sustainable development. And then I will be closing by sharing some thoughts on what are some immediate measures, something immediately we can do for promoting the Sustainable Development Goals and the so-called 2030 Agenda, and what ESCAP is doing about this. I am an environmental economist by profession, so I've studied and I've spent a big part of my professional career by trying to analyzing relations between environment, natural resources, and economic development. And I cannot claim that I'm a big expert probably on environmental economics, but my 25 years plus of experience have shown me one thing. It is completely impossible to disconnect and to detach economic growth and well-being from the management of natural resources. If we do want to have a future, a better future, not only for us, but also for our children and the many generations to come, then we need to treat with the absolute respect and with the most sustainable way the natural resources. I know that today we do say that our economy is based on services, is based on new sectors, and it's not so much a natural resources-based economy, because in most of the industrialized or the emerging countries, the big realize that what it comes from the service sector is added value that needs to be based on another economy that is based itself on natural resources. So we need to use oil, we need to use water, energy, different materials to have our economy running. And for many years, I have the feeling that we gave so much focus on just the economic output of the economic development that we forgot a little bit the input. So I wanted to share some numbers with you. There are many studies that they have been done recently, the last 3 or 4 years, that they try to explain on what we call the resource efficiency of the economy. In very simple words, how many natural resources we need to produce, for example, 1 unit of GDP, $1 of GDP. How much material we need, how much energy, how much water. And today, fortunately, we do have a lot of good information to study this efficiency, this resource efficiency of the economy for at least the last 40 years. The figures are really staggering. We have, first, what we observe, it's a huge variation between countries. And if there's a kind of rule of thumb here, what we know is that industrialized countries, they are able to produce more with the same amount of resources. And I don't want, and I don't like to compare countries, and I'm not going to do this in terms of comparison, but I want to give you 3 figures that they are coming from our region. It has been estimated that to produce $1 of GDP, Japan needs approximately half a kilo of resources. And when we say half a kilo of resources, we include materials, we include biomass. It's an aggregation of natural resources. The similar figure for Vietnam, a country just next, is 9 kilos. So from 0.5, from half a kilo in Japan to 9 kilos in Vietnam, 18 times more. And Vietnam is not the less resource efficient economy. There are economies that they need 25 or 27 kilos to produce of natural resources to produce 1 unit of GDP. So we have seen, and let me go to my notes so I'm saying something that it's correct here, that these regional differences, they are between 67 times between the most efficient and the less efficient country. So there are two things to consider here. One is that the countries in this region have many things to learn among themselves. They have many things to learn on how they can do better use of natural resources, how they can use more efficient specific technologies. And the second is that there's a huge range for improvement. So even if we use existing technologies without the need to invent new technologies, and we direct investments in these new technologies for resource efficiency, for cleaner production, for sustainable development, we can have tremendous gains. And the good thing is that these gains will start fueling another part of the economy. They will start fueling a social part of the economy where we will be able to provide more basic services to the citizens, and they will also fueling more employment because new businesses will happen. Talking about natural resources, let me also say that on top of the challenge of the non-efficient use of natural resources, we have two other challenges. The one is that many natural resources are depleted. We explore them and we use them in a rate that it's much bigger than the rate that Mother Nature can bring them back to a stock, to an acceptable, sustainable stock. Deforestation is a very big example here. Deforestation is intensifying in most of the countries in Asia Pacific, and in general, the region has not made progress in preventing further deforestation. Sometimes we listen that we cannot achieve everything and we need to pay some price for the development. I very humbly believe that this is not the right approach, because if we think that the benefits of the development process are having to do with employment, having to do with well-being, we need to make sure that these benefits are lasting in the long term. And what's happening many times is that we do have some economic progress, and it will give some benefits only for the short term, and then we will start to lose them. The third problem with natural resources is the projected huge increase use and increased stock that we will need for the decades to come. Only in Asia and the Pacific, we estimate that about almost 1 billion more middle-class consumers will be added in the next 30 years. So, let me repeat. Today we have in most of the countries in Asia Pacific what we call an extreme rich class, the middle class, and then the poor. The middle class is the one that is driving consumption because of the numbers. So imagine that in the middle class you have today in Asia Pacific, you add 1 more billion for the next 30 years to come. If this billion will consume the way that the middle class is consuming today, it means that we will run out of natural resources. So we need to start an effort that we call decoupling. And decoupling is how we will disconnect the growth of the economy from the use of natural resources and from the impact on the environment. By achieving decoupling, we will be able to produce financial resources and economic growth, and at the same time being able to reduce the environmental impact and improve the well-being of the people. The issue and the challenges related to the use of management of natural resources are not the only ones, the only big challenges when it comes to sustainable development. Another very big challenge is inequality. It is true that developing countries, they have achieved to reduce poverty, and they have achieved to increase the advantage in the history of global or regional or national development. We do have countries, and we do have countries in this region, that they have achieved economic growth rates up to 7, 10, 12%. Remember where Thailand was in economic growth before the 1997 crisis. And remember what happened after the 1997 crisis and how many years they were needed to recover and go back to big growth rates. One problem is that the accumulated wealth of this growth, it's not gone equally to all the people. And what's happening is that usually the huge proportion, a very big proportion of this accumulated wealth will go to a very small number of people. So only a small number of people will benefit from the economic growth, and unfortunately, statistics and data that we are looking for at least the last 15 years, they told us that inequality of income has increased or at least remained unchanged in most of the countries in Asia and the Pacific. So the best thing we can say about inequality, and I think this is shameful, is that there was no progress. So the disparity between poor and rich remains, and it widens, and we don't see signals on how this could improve. But inequality of income is not the only inequality that many people are facing. There's another inequality, which is inequality of opportunities and inequality to access to basic services. And I want to share a small personal story here that my professional life changed 12 years ago when I made my first mission, my first professional mission in one of the least developed countries of this region, and I saw how people were living there. So I understood how much we cannot appreciate, we cannot evaluate what are the challenges that the people are facing in the least developed countries. And another thing, and let me not only say the negative stories, but say a good story, another thing that made me extremely hopeful is when I made several trips in rural Thailand, in the north, in the east, in the south, and I saw that even in small towns, there was always a very well-preserved school and some medical facilities. So there was access to education, there was access to health, and this kind of access is needed, this kind of access to all people need to have this access. So, issues with the management of natural resources, issues of inequality of growth, and last, another challenge is issues regarding participation. I think that everybody share the thought, and this is something that has been documented very well, at least in the forum of the in the environment of the United Nations, that governments are the main responsible agencies to promote development and to plan for development. But while strong governmental action and leadership is necessary, it's not sufficient. We cannot accept and we cannot believe that progress will come only with governmental action. It will need not only participation from the private sector and participation from other stakeholders, but it will need the development process to happen in a way that all major groups, all stakeholders, all civil society will have a voice and they will express their needs. Because this is the way that the development process could be planned and leave no one behind. And I'm making this reference to leave no one behind because it is the major theme for this year's high-level political forum on sustainable development that's happening in New York this July. So this is, let me try to summarize my first part of the presentation, which is, for me, the three big the three biggest challenges on sustainable development right now, especially in the context of developing countries in Asia Pacific, is the non-sustainable management of natural resources, the increase in the inequality of income and opportunities, and the increased participation of many stakeholders in the development planning. So sustainability, we believe, is the only way forward, because the business as usual way, the way we are doing businesses, the way we are doing development planning, has proved that cannot cover the needs of all today and cannot cover the needs of the future. So we need policies and strategies that they will strengthen synergies among the three dimensions of sustainable development. And I think if there is a kind of bet that we need to put, and if there is something that we need to pursue, is how we integrate the three dimensions of sustainable development. The discussion on sustainability has started decades ago, from things and from think tanks like the Club of Rome, the so-called Brundtland Commission, and then the Rio Conference in 1992, the Rio +20, the Rio +20, and we always say, and it's a common knowledge now, that sustainable development could not be separated, and it's always the three pillars, the economic, the social, and the environmental, that should come together. But if we do what's happening in practice, if we do what's happening in reality, and if we want to be very sincere and open with ourselves, I do believe that we must admit that economy was always coming first. And economy was always prioritized. And what was actually prioritized was not economic development, but economic growth. And it was always prioritized the short-term growth. So we really need now, if we want to make justice to our effort for sustainable development, to integrate the environment and the social dimension into the high-level development planning. So when it comes especially to the environment and economy interface, it's clear that with more constrained natural resources, we cannot really do economy without having an environmental dimension. If sustainable development is the way forward, how we can operationalize sustainable development. Last September in New York, the world leaders have adopted one of the most ambitious and I would say the most participatory agendas that have ever the United World has put together, the United Nations has put together. The Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals have been now started to be in the core of the development process in many countries. 2 months ago, the United Nations ESCAP organized with other stakeholders the third session of the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. And we were extremely happy and we were extremely pleased to see there are many countries that they have already started to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into their national development planning, with different measures and different approaches. Countries that they have instituted a ministry on sustainable development to have some coordinating role, like Sri Lanka. Countries that they have established interministerial panels and interministerial committees to coordinate on sustainable development. Countries that they have changed completely their investment processes and investment rules to target sustainable development goals and make the targets of the sustainable development goals achievable. So progress is happening, but for progress to result on benefits, we need to take full advantage of the means of implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. We need to take full advantage of science, technology, innovation, full advantage of the trade potential, and most importantly at all, full advantage of the finance and investment mean of implementation. And I think that the entire success, or at least the biggest part of the success on implementing the Sustainable Development Goals will lie on finance and investments. One question I'm facing many times is how much money will be needed to implement the Sustainable Development Goals? Well, there have been a number of studies. Unfortunately, I don't have to give you a figure regarding only Asia and the Pacific, but the study that we take into account in the United Nations, it's a study that has been done by the UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, and it estimates that worldwide, for the developing countries, we have a financing gap of $2.3 trillion per year. Took me some time to appreciate the figure, so I said it second time, it's $2.3 trillion per year. And sometimes when I'm struggling with figures, I'm trying to say one thing. If I say to my 77-year-old mother that we need 2.3 trillion to fix sustainability, what she will ask me? And she will ask me, how much is this money? And the question is the $2.3 trillion a lot of money? I mean, everybody that will say that it's not a lot of money needs to visit some doctor. So, of course, 2.3 trillion is a huge amount of money. But let's start comparing this with some other figures. Global GDP, the global product of every year's economic activity, approximately 80 trillion. So, this 2.3 trillion looks like 3% of the global GDP. You see how different it sounds if I tell you $2.3 trillion or if I send you 3% of the GDP. It will even sound another way if I tell you that $2.3 trillion is just the annual income of the 7 biggest corporations in the world. So if you take just the 7 of the Fortune 500 corporations and you add their annual income, it's $2.3 trillion. So my point is the following. $2.3 trillion is, yes, a lot of money, but it's something achievable within the capability of our economy. And these $2.3 trillion are not money that they have been added out of nothing to the economy, but they are money that they are channeling to the economy, they are going to the economy because they represent more or less the annual growth in developing countries, but they need to be reoriented towards sustainable investments. So it's not so much about how we found the new money, but but it's also about how we reorient the money to achieve sustainable development. So what else we will need on top of the finance? We will need a change in the way we are thinking about policies. And I think we need 3 things. First, to stop targeting short-term profit, but to start targeting long-term well-being benefits. The second is we need to start including in our evaluations and economic models the economic and social positive and negative impacts of any development plan. We cannot continue taking decisions only on the financial flows of the economy. We need to take into account the valuation of nature, the valuation of the social capital. And we need also to change the mindset of the institutions so the way that they will plan policies will be much more efficient. What I have asked ESCAP in the last commission and also in the last session of the APFSD, the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, to facilitate regional cooperation for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are coordinating and we are channeling our efforts through 3 main groups of work. One is to provide some support to all countries in the region, but especially to the least developed countries, the landlocked countries, the small island, and the developing countries on how they can start embedding and integrating SDGs into their national development planning. By doing this, we want to provide both analytical tools and knowledge to the countries so they can understand better where their starting points, but also to provide solutions on how things can be improved. The second is that we are playing an important role, or we hope to play an important role, on the so-called follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda and the follow-up and review of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are doing partnerships, and right now ESCAP is working with other organizations like the Asia Development Bank, the UNDP, UNEP, on trying to have an annual report. And the last but not least is to facilitate the use of the implementation mechanism and the means of implementation for the sustainable goals, especially in countries with special needs, including through capacity development in countries that they are having development challenges. In all these efforts, we are looking at the example of the sufficiency economic philosophy as a practical approach that could be used to operationalize the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Let me share with you that there has been criticism about the Sustainable Development Goals, that they are very aspirational, but they are not operational. Because with 17 goals and 169 targets, it's a little bit problematic to be operational. And I think this criticism is a little bit unfair because it's looking only at the numbers. It's looking at the 17 goals and 169 targets. If we look a little bit carefully in the entire text of the 2030 Agenda, we will see that the world leaders have said that, listen, this is a framework for action, and there's not something that we call a recipe for all countries. And each country needs to take its own measures, and each country needs to make its own assessment. So it is approaches, tools and frameworks like the sufficiency economy philosophy that can help the country, and in our case helps already Thailand for many years, to define the path for sustainable development. The sufficiency economy philosophy could be for Thailand probably one of the best tools to operationalize the aspirations of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that this is a big opportunity, and I'm very pleased to see that many institutions in Thailand, the Thailand's way of doing businesses, the Thailand way of governance, is putting the sufficient economy philosophy at the core of the development process, because it means that it puts also the Sustainable Development Agenda in the core of the development process. Thank you very much.
Please kindly remain on the stage. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stefanos Fortio. Thank you so very much indeed. The Director of Environment and Development Division, United Nations ESCAP, for sharing with us and enlightening us with your worldly knowledge and experiences. Very informative and plenty of food for thought indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to express our appreciation, may I wish to call upon Mom Ratchawong Ditnada Disakun, the Chairman of the Mae Pha Luang Foundation, under the royal patronage, to kindly proceed to the stage to deliver a token of appreciation to Mr. Stefanos Fortio. So please put your hand together to welcome Mom Ratchawong Ditnada Disakun. The friends from Media Course, kindly have your cameras ready. So we have the first photo shot here. Could you please kindly step a bit forward? Thank you very much. And we also we also have the second photo opportunity. So may I call upon Associate Professor Nuon Noi Trirat, the Director from the Asian Studies Institute, together with Mrs. วันวิมลสุภประเสริฐ from มั่นพัฒนา Foundation the Deputy General Director to come and join the photo session. The warm round of applause. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have approximately 15 minutes coffee and tea break. That the snacks and coffee and tea is already waiting for you at the foyer. And please don't miss your opportunity to visit and experience the exhibition organized by Thailand Sustainable Development Foundation. So wish we have a very fruitful first session, ladies and gentlemen. And please kindly resume to this room at how about 10:10 a.m. ladies and gentlemen, for your break time. Please come back so we can commence the second session. Now, everyone, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. How you like the taste of Thai coffee and tea? Like it? Brilliant. So now we can happily proceed on to the second session of the conference today. Now, in this session, we'll touch upon the depth of the national development organizations, starting with the UNOS Center of Bangladesh, and followed by the Chuji Foundation of Taiwan, and then thirdly, the Mae Fa Luang Foundation of Thailand. And each presentation will take approximately 10 minutes to provide you the core information before we proceed to the panel discussion on the topic of perspective on sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, before we commence, may I wish to request humbly to your kind cooperation to fill in the questionnaire finding at your seat and to return it before lunch break. Thank you very much. The first presentation will be by Mrs. Lamia Morshid, the Executive Director from UNOS Center, Dhaka, Bangladesh, the global hub for social business activities of Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus. In addition to her responsibilities at UNOS Center, she also served as the Managing Director of Grameen Healthcare Trust. Mrs. Morshid served as a board member of the following social businesses: Grameen Healthcare Services Limited, Grameen Creative Lab, Germany, Grameen Uniqlo, and Japan Auto Mechanic Company Limited. And she also served as the board director of Grameen Trust, Professor Muhammad Yunus Trust, as well as the UNOS Social Business in Albania. And she is also a member of Management Committee of Grameen Caledonian College of Nursing, or GCCN, a joint venture nursing college established by Grameen Healthcare Trust and Glasgow. She also served on the advisory board of Make Sense, a Paris-based youth organization working for social change, and as a director on the board of UNOS and Youth, a youth organization promoting social business around the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hand together to welcome Mrs. Lamia Morshid to kindly proceed on the stage to make the first presentation.
These distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin by thanking you to invite me to present at the Sustainability Development Challenges in Asia Conference. In particular, I would like to thank the Institute of Asian Studies of Chulalongkorn University and the Royal Thai Embassy in Dhaka for enabling my participation. This conference is organized on the most auspicious occasion to mark 70 years since the ascension of the throne of His Majesty the King. This is an honor and a privilege for me to be here to partake in these discussions. Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus had been invited to be here today, but for another commitment, he couldn't be here. But he conveys his heartiest congratulations to His Majesty the King on this wonderful occasion, and to all of you here who have come to discuss the very critical issues of sustainable development in Asia. As His Majesty has always espoused and promoted through his 70-year reign, we cannot have development without sustainability. The world now recognizes that. As our keynote earlier this morning said, in September 2015, the UN adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 very bold goals and 169 targets around which the world could be united. This provides a framework of action for all of us, governments, the private sector, NGO foundations, and all of us as individuals to work towards. We may say that the goals such as zero poverty and zero hunger are unrealistic, but many countries have achieved the halving of that poverty goal and the hunger goal by 2015 as part of the Millennium Development Goals. So it is therefore foreseeable that this can be brought to zero. We must have a clear destination to guide us. Many of the goals that are laid out have been central to the work that we've been doing in Bangladesh through Grameen and now UNOS Center. and sustainability has always been at the core of every activity that we have undertaken. I will talk about the approach that we have been working on, both in terms of philosophical underpinnings, but also mentioning practical aspects, which are now also being followed around the world and which may also have relevance for Thailand in its pursuit of sustainable development as put forward by His Majesty the King. Thank you again for having me here. So basically the work of Grameen Bank and over 40 years in Bangladesh has led us to believe certain things about the way the world works today. One is that poverty is not created by people, but is created by the policies and institutions that we have built. If given the opportunity, the poor will change their own lives, not through charity, but through their own efforts and in a sustainable manner. The other thing that we have seen is that the global economic system currently only the one to make money, to make personal money. The economic theory postulates that the economic actor is motivated by the desire to maximize profit from him or herself. So the experience that we have is that actually human beings are not just selfish beings as postulated by the economic theory, but they're also selfless as well. But that selflessness does not have the possibility of being played out in the global marketplace. If we could bring selflessness into play, we say that the economic marketplace would look very different. And this is where we bring in the concept of social business, which is what we are working on. We have a very clear definition when we talk about social business. It's a selfless business, a non-dividend company that solves human problems. People will say, why would someone engage in a business that doesn't yield personal profit? And I'd like to quote Professor Yunus here, because he says, making money is happiness, but making other people is a super happiness. And why don't we put that incentive at the heart of business? So we have a clear set of principles because we think that, we think that it's very clear to define what we're talking about because there's a lot of vagueness around the ideas of social business and social enterprise and social CSR and sustainable business of different kinds. So we have a very clear set of definitions when we talk about social business. One is that it has a very clear business objective to overcome a predetermined social problem. It can be poverty related, it can be related to an economic issue, an environmental issue, it can be to do with providing clean water, related to healthcare. So clear, defined objective. Second is that it is a business. It has to be financially and economic sustainability. Third, so people invest in it, they can get their investment money back during a defined period of time, but nothing beyond that. Any profits made beyond that stay within the company. 4, when the investment company money is paid back, as I said, the profits are used to grow that business, to reach more people with a product and service that benefits them, and also for expansion and improvement of the product or service. Finally, 5th, it has to be gender sensitive and environmentally conscious. 6th, we say that the workforce, it's a business, we need good management talent. So the workforce will get market wages, and we would argue that there would be better working conditions because the work brings us satisfaction. And finally, and this is last and not least, is that we do it with joy. We are motivated by the desire to help other people and to help society, and that is our 7th principle. So why business? Because charity, which we have had since time immemorial, is a wonderful thing, but a charity dollar has one life. It goes out, it does the work, but doesn't come back. A social business dollar, if it's done properly, will live endlessly. It recycles endlessly and can grow. So I wanted to say that, so the idea of social business didn't come about overnight. It's basically an evolution of the work we have done in Bangladesh. People know the story of Grameen Bank. In 1976, Professor Yunus started out by giving small amounts of money to poor people in the villages of Bangladesh to help them support their income-generating activities. People said this could not be done but today it's a huge nationwide bank in Bangladesh. It's owned by the poor people, by poor women. It's reaching, I'll go over the statistics in a moment. And that was basically our first social business. Over the years, as Grameen Bank progressed, in providing financial services to the poorest, there were many other social needs that the rural people had. And each time, Professor Yunus and his colleagues created a separate entity to address that social issue. And each time, it was a sustainable business. And each time, so for example, there are 50 such companies in Bangladesh today, but Professor Yunus, as the initiator of them, he does not own a single share in any of them. So it's a business, but it's not about making money personally for the shareholders. And so these, we call these companies the precursors to social business, and it led to the creation of social businesses, which are deliberately created organizations that solve social problems. This is what Grameen Bank looks like today. So from that initial $27 to 42 people in the villages of Bangladesh, it's now reaching 8.8 million families, 97% of whom are women. The bank has loaned out $19 billion to date. The loans outstanding are $1.3 billion. The recovery rate is 98% still, and this has been the kind of average over the 40-year history of Grameen Bank. The total deposits that the poor people hold within the bank totals $2.3 billion. We have built 700,000 houses through the housing loans that the bank provides. In addition, the bank provides education loans and scholarships to the children of the Grameen families. And it's now operating in 81,000 villages of Bangladesh, which is virtually the entire country. So this is the first social business. These are some pictures from that. But this has led to the creation of several social businesses in Bangladesh, and I will focus on maybe one or two, and then maybe during our discussion I'll have a chance to talk about some of the other ones. Some of them are created as a joint venture partnership with a private global company. So the famous one is the one we have with Danone of France, and the company basically set itself to address the issue of child malnutrition. And the way it did this was to create a special yogurt which contains the micronutrients that are missing in the diets of the children of rural Bangladesh. Grameen and Danone have both invested in the company, but both by agreement will never take out dividends from it. The entire focus of the business is to target children to have this yogurt as a way to tackle malnutrition. So this is the special yogurt, and neither side will take a dividend. It uses innovative marketing and distribution means. One of the things it does is to have the women, the Grameen Bank borrowers, go door to door to the homes of villagers around Bangladesh to sell this yogurt, explaining to the families why this cup of yogurt is better for their health than maybe a packet of chips or a packet of cookies that costs around the same thing. And these are some pictures from that. So that's what the yogurt looks like. You can see the ladies going around selling the yogurt in the villages. The important thing is that it's not free. People pay for this, but that's only so that the business can keep on going. So we reached operational break-even in 2015, and since we are not looking at the shareholder value as the way to gauge the success of the company, we have to look at what has taken place in terms of the impact. And so Johns Hopkins did an independent study over a 1-year period of children ages 6 to 9 who were taking this yogurt versus a control group of children ages 6 to 9 who were taking another non-fortified yogurt. And basically, at the end of 1 year, for kids who were taking this every day, it showed that the kids who were taking the yogurt were performing better on cognitive tests and had a better measure both in terms of height and mid-arm circumference. So the point here is that since we are not looking as personal profit making as being the measure of success, we have to build in an impact indicator to look at what is our success. The second social business that I will focus on, and then the rest I will just skim over, is the Grameen Eye Care Hospitals. This is not a joint venture with an international company. It's a standalone social business that we established, and it's basically providing eye treatment on a sustainable basis to the poor communities, mainly focused on eye checks, but cataract operations at an affordable rate. And basically, it works on a cross-subsidy way, so the people at the top pay a premium, people who can will pay according to what they can afford, and those at the bottom don't pay anything at all. But overall, the business is this is the four hospitals that we've created in 4 regions of Bangladesh. 850,000 patients have been served so far, 50% coming from the poor families. It was the first social business within our group of companies to break even, and it focuses mainly on eye exams and cataract surgeries. So you can see here that each of the units broke even. So now the power of this is that it can basically continue to grow on the basis of its own resources. So these are some pictures from the eye care hospital. So I won't go into the other ones because it'll be too long. We have a nursing college that's based on the social business principles. We have BSF Grameen, which is a joint venture with a German company that's producing long-lasting insecticidal nets, also as a social business. People pay for it, and it helps tackle mosquito-borne diseases. The interesting thing is that all the companies have signed here that they will never take dividends, and they have also invested their proprietary technology in implementing the social business. We have another social business with Veolia, which is treating surface water in an area where the groundwater is contaminated with arsenic, which is a very widespread problem in Bangladesh, and providing also on a cross-subsidized way treated water at a higher price to those who can afford it, and people providing it at a lower price to those at the bottom who can't pay that much. There's Grameen Intel. This is with the US-based company Intel that you may have heard of, and it's basically working together to create technological devices and technological apps to apply to the social problems that we see. And the point is that if you're looking at a problem through the problem-solving lens rather than the profit-making lens, then you come up with a very different model of how you will do the business. The board, the management, the staff are all focused on solving the social problem, and they will be their success will be measured on the basis of that. So these are some of the examples that we have in Bangladesh, and we're basically saying that this has created interest around the world as well, and what are the elements that we need in order to scale up these types of initiatives. So one is, of course, awareness, and that is that we introduce into school and college curricula about an alternative way to do business. If it's not in the education, then people don't know that this is an option for them. It's a different way. People are very trained, the young people of Bangladesh are very trained to come out and work for the biggest multinational company out there. So this is something that's happening, and I will touch on that a little bit later. We have social business competitions where we engage young people to come up with social business ideas and link that to investment financing. This is also happening both in Bangladesh and abroad. We have something called Design Lab, which is a platform where entrepreneurs come together to present their business plans and where experts will give feedback on the design of those businesses and also pledge investment. And this is also being replicated. Funds. People say that where will a big company like Danone may have lots of extra cash to put into a company like this without the desire to make money. But what about a startup? So what's happening now, both in Bangladesh and around the world, is that we are creating special funds that will finance both in terms of loans, equity, to finance social businesses that aim to solve a social problem. And then we have global and regional events. Again, I'll touch on this a bit later. So this social business fund is a key part. In Bangladesh, we have Grameen Telecom Trust. It's using the profits of the largest telephone operator in Bangladesh, of which Grameen is a part owner, to invest into social businesses. And YSB is another organization based out of Germany, Yunus Social Business, that's creating these specialized funds to provide the initial capital and the scale-up capital to fund social businesses. So the funds themselves operate a social business. That means the investors do not get any dividends beyond recouping their initial investment. This is a social business design lab. This is a platform also that's being replicated in other countries, which is something that we've been doing to generate new social businesses from outside the Grameen remit. So independent entrepreneurs and business people who want to do social business can come in. So in Bangladesh, to date, in the last 3 years, we have had generated 5,700 social businesses. So the approved projects, those that are operational, and those that are in the pipeline, and those that need to be reworked and relaunched. So these are a couple of examples of social businesses that are not run by us, but which are being created independently. So one project to address affordable sanitary napkins for young women in the villages of Bangladesh. So this is an independent company that is invested in creating this, sustainable, but not intended to make personal profit. This is another one, mustard oil, which is a healthy edible oil in Bangladesh. Again, here, one of the social objectives is to employ people from indigenous communities who are more marginalized than the mainstream Bangla communities. And then this is the last aspect that I will focus on is a major program that is Grameen is now implementing, which is focused on the second generation of the Grameen families. We found that the children of the Grameen families are coming out and being educated to a very high level, but that they are running after jobs that don't exist in Bangladesh. So Grameen challenged them to become entrepreneurs. They said that, your mother did not struggle 30 years, so you would be going around to beg for jobs that don't exist. We will provide the startup money for you to start up your own business. And Professor Yunus has told them that you should look at yourself and say, I'm not a job seeker, I'm a job creator, and become an entrepreneur. In the last 3 years, through the Social Business Design Lab, we have financed 5,000 young entrepreneurs coming out of Grameen families to start their own businesses. One of the attractive features about this is that it's not focused in the cities. They go back usually to the areas that they come from. They create employment for themselves, and ultimately they create employment for others. So this is something that we have been saying that the young people should do, and that this is creates this change in mentality from being a job seeker to a job creator. It's all over Bangladesh. There are 4 Grameen companies that are financing these projects. And this is the process that the new entrepreneur is selected, their business plans are analyzed, they're presented at the design lab and approved for funding, and then on an ongoing basis they report on the basis of daily SMSs to a central server that we manage in Dhaka, and that they are then followed up on a regular basis. And this graphs here kind of show how it's been growing. So it's in the sector of handicrafts, agriculture, animal husbandry, fisheries, services, transportation, microbusiness, shopkeeping, factories, and so on. It's still very much based on young men. We are focused very much on trying to get young women involved in this, and this is one of the things that we are monitoring to see how this can be increased. The interesting thing about this is that the fund is a social business. That means the fund is putting in the equity into these young people's business without any intention of making money from them. We put in a certain amount, they put in a certain amount. At the end of a preset period, they return our money and become the full owner of the business. For them, the business is a for-profit business, and it's basically solving the issue of unemployment for them and for others around them. And this is creating a virtuous cycle of increasing jobs in the rural areas. So these are a couple of examples of the type. It's a very small amount of money, 50,000, 100,000 takas, which is, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. But there's no institution in the country, no financial institution, even with all our microcredit, that will lend this money to them. Without all kinds of very elaborate requirements. So we said we create a fund, and our job is to provide them the opportunity to become entrepreneurs and business owners. So this is a picture of the design lab that we have every month. Professor Yunus chairs it, and a lot of the projects are coming out from that lab. It's grown across the world now. We are operating in 10 countries where we create a fund, and we create an accelerator to generate the projects into which the fund will finance. This is a map that shows our activities around the world, and an interesting map that shows the partner universities. We have 30 such universities around the world where they're introducing social business into their curricula. And the main idea is that young people then know that they have a different type of business that they can get involved with, which is not about making personal money for themselves. We have a partner here in Thailand. We partner with Asian Institute of Technology. We have a center there. It's been operating for some years. My colleagues from there are also here today, and they have been working on promoting this concept in Thailand. So these are the university social business. It's a one-stop platform called socialbusinesspedia.com, where you can find every information about what is happening in this field, both in Bangladesh and internationally, in terms of universities, in terms of resources, and so on. In the context of the 17 UN Global Goals, yes, this is a very powerful framework of action for all of us, and it's been the MDGs were central to the work that we do, and we have also adopted to implement the 17 new goals through our work. Professor Yunus is actually focusing on 3 particular ones: zero poverty, zero unemployment, and zero net carbon emission. So these, for us, for the Grameen and Yunus Center, these are the 3 goals that we are focusing on, because we don't think either poverty needs to exist, unemployment doesn't need to exist. It's an artificial concept imposed on people. Our initiatives through the New Entrepreneurs Program show that unemployment is an artificial concept that we've imposed on people. It doesn't exist within people. So zero unemployment and zero net carbon emissions, which everyone agreed last December in Paris, is something that is endangering the one habitat that we all have as a human family, and that is something that has to underpin everything that we do. So as a concluding note, we say that when we delink the idea of personal profit from business, it becomes all about using our creativity and all of our energies to solve the human problems. And this is at the core, I think, of what every human being is about. And if we can focus our energies in this way, we don't think there's any social problem that cannot be addressed and overcome, not even the bold goals of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Social business does not replace either conventional business or charity. Each has a place and is important. But we can create something in between, which is social business, which gives people one more option. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Lamia Morshet. That's so very informative indeed. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. And of course, the full moral support from all of us for you to reach the 3-0 destinations as soon as possible. That's the mainstream of development taking place in Bangladesh, ladies and gentlemen. And up next, for the second presentation, we'll provide you a rather different yet very interesting approach to the definition of development, for it's based on the caring and sharing. So please kindly put your hand together to welcome Mrs. Monica Sain, the Buddhist Compassion Relief Xu Ji Foundation from Taiwan. She supervises and guides overseas chapter of Xu Ji Foundation, which includes Thailand, Hong Kong, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. Ms. Monica Sain.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting Xu Ji Foundation for this very auspicious event. So I'm here representing the headquarters office of our foundation. I heard a lot of people were asking a while ago, what is Tzu Ji? A lot of people were like questioning, Tzu Ji, what does Tzu Ji mean? Actually, Tzu Ji comes from a Chinese word. It actually means compassion, and relief. So, we believe that in doing good things, we have to have compassion. So it is hard for us to give something or to be doing something without any compassion. As like Ban Ki-moon from the UN Executive Secretary mentioned during the UNDPI and the latest WHS, he said that everybody has compassion is very good. So, however, if we only have compassion, then we will always it's easy for us to be led to the wrong way. However, if we use compassion and wisdom in doing things, then it will actually make us stronger and even make us more firm and determined with our goals. So this is actually what Tzu Chi Foundation is all about. As our name says, it's compassion and relief. And we believe that compassion and wisdom should go together in every step of our way. So, Tzu Chi is actually an international humanitarian organization. And we are also, we are also part of the UN ECOSOC. So we actually got this special cumulative status of ECOSOC, and we are also in association with DPI NGO. So, there. Who is the background? Who is the mother? Or who made Tzu Chi happen? Our founder, Master Cheng Yen. Yes, you're right. What you're seeing on your screen is our founder. She is a Buddhist nun. We are actually a Buddhist-based foundation. However, we don't actually cater to only Buddhist people. So we have a lot of, we have a wide range of volunteers. In the Philippines, it's a Catholic-based it's a Catholic-based country. So we have Catholic volunteers. And then we also have volunteers in Turkey, in Indonesia, who's actually Muslims, Protestants. So we have volunteers in all over 54 countries. So Tzu Chi today is already 50 years. So for five decades, our founder, Master Cheng Yen, supported and sustained Tzu Chi Foundation through self-work and self-determination. And this is how we, the volunteers of the Tzu Chi Foundation, is taught. We have to be self-sustainable. Master always believed that a day of no work is a day of no meal. And this is not only true to herself. It is also true to her disciples, to the Buddhist nuns of the abode of our spiritual home. And it is also true for all our volunteers. All the volunteers all over the world, over 10 million supporters, volunteers that we have. Every time we go to a relief operation, what we do is we use our own vacation, we use our own money. We never use the money or the donations that the foundation receives, because we believe that the donations that the foundation receives should go directly to the recipients, to those people who needs it, to the vulnerable communities. So this is what our what our foundation is all about. Yes, so great love. When we talk about great love, this is actually what brings us together. We believe that no matter what religion we believe, what kind of race, what kind of religion, what kind of nationality we have, whether we are white, Caucasians, or black, we are actually all the same. We are all equal because we all we all have this great love from within. So great love from Taiwan to around the world. And today, yes, we have 54, we are all over 54 countries, and we already have humanitarian aid, including the latest earthquake that happened in Ecuador, and the refugees that we have in Serbia. So we have been serving a lot of people, and including Thailand. The refugees in Thailand has also grown up in number in the past year. So we actually have a branch office here in Thailand, which is just right across Rama 9 Park. And we also have our volunteers at the back. So later on, we can actually have interaction with them if you want to know more about what the foundation is doing here in Thailand. So, of course, part of this one, Tzu Chi Foundation have already started, giving services, medical services to the refugees here in Thailand. So,